For the first time, the Democratic Party is investing considerable resources to turn out American voters living abroad. According to DNC officials, there are 1.6 million Americans living overseas who are eligible to vote in 7 battleground states. Here's one example that shows just how critical this voting bloc is. In 2020, President Biden won Georgia by just 11,700 votes. According to the Election Assistance Commission, there were over 18,000 ballots cast from overseas voters registered in Georgia. Joining us now, former ambassador to Canada, Bruce Heyman. He recently participated in a meeting called Americans Abroad for Harris Waltz and authored an op-ed on MSNBC.com entitled How Americans Living Abroad Could Decide the 2024 Election. It's good to have you back on the show, Mr. Ambassador. So how to get the word out to Americans living abroad? What's the challenge here?
Well, the challenge is many Americans don't even realize that they can vote when they live abroad. And then when they realize they can vote, they don't know how. Do they call mom and dad back at home and say, how do I do this? Get me an absentee ballot. But this is protected by federal law. And this federal law has been established for all 50 states that Americans living anywhere in the world have the right to vote. And all they have to do is go to votefromabroad.org. Register to vote and get your ballot. Now, those ballots are by law sent out 45 days before the election. So those ballots are going to be heading out in less than 2 weeks. And so right now, I'm just saying this is it. This is the opportunity. And how do we get the word out? We do it right here on your show. We have influencers like Nancy Pelosi promoting this very strongly. We have social media influencers coming out, actors, actresses. We had over 60 actors, actresses, participants, social media influencers, politicians last week on this global call with tens of thousands of participants and well over 1,000 new ballots just being requested even during the call itself. So this is the opportunity. And as you mentioned, we won at the margin, Arizona and Georgia. And so all you have to do is go to votefromabroad.org if you're an American overseas, or if you're in the U.S. and you know somebody who's studying abroad this fall or traveling or doing business overseas. This is your shot right now. It's really important.
So, Mr. Ambassador, I would assume, and not to paint with a broad brush, that for Americans living overseas might have certain issues that really matter to them that might be a little different than those who are back home. Or is part of the pitch going to be tailor-made to those who might say, for instance, really care about American alliances abroad?
You're absolutely right. So an American walking on the streets of Pittsburgh has a very different perspective in some ways than the American walking on the streets of Warsaw. And it may very well be that when you mention to somebody in Europe that NATO is at threat because of Donald Trump and we have to do something to protect the European continent, you say that in Pittsburgh, I think the focus may be on much more things that affect them at home in the economy. So foreign policy is a huge issue, and I think it's a strength for the vice president in this race, because Donald Trump has already threatened NATO. He's threatened Ukraine. He's really threatened the multilateral approach that the U.S. has had since World War II. He's a go-it-alone kind of guy. And I have gone out on a limb here with the Canadians and saying this is your tsunami warning. If Donald Trump's elected, you're going to be under deep threat specifically.